Hi, everybody. This is S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com, and I just found Nathan here. Let's get him in here. There we go. Nathan?
Hey, SJ.
I didn't know when you were going to show up, so I see you go by Nate Dogg now, huh? Hey,
I was just thinking of like a funny thing I could put as my name. And but if I made it too long, like it covered the whole thing, so I did, but
yeah, no, that's funny. So yeah, Nate Dogg is easy. That's a good way to remember you. So how have you been?
I'm all right. I see you're already live. I didn't realize it's all right though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all right. Just the end of the weekend now, so thinking about work tomorrow, and
I'm trying to see how to. I'm playing around with these screens here. This is the first time I've used StreamYard, and so
yeah.
Seeing no, I don't want me to be the biggest. What's this one?
Oh,
okay.
You can see comments and stuff. Can you comment from here to YouTube?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I post, I'm in StreamYard, so if I post in StreamYard, like I just saw Jesse camping, and I think he found me on YouTube, so this went live on YouTube. I wonder how you do a background. You can see these leaves here. I did the free version of StreamYard, and so I got the very basic stuff. I can't even put my own signature in here anywhere, and I had to use this default with a picture of leaves in the background.
Do you know how much it costs? Is it like is it like $16 or something?
It's $20 a month, but they bill you for the year, so I have to make sure I like it.
Right.
So I don't want to.
Yeah, big investment, right? Like.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's billed for a year. If I don't like it and I use it once, then if it's not any better than Zoom, I mean Zoom I'm paying for and I use for my classes. So
yeah,
so that's a whole different deal. Let's see. I wonder if Craig is. So this is kind of cool.
It could be better for streaming, just because like I think the aesthetic's a bit nicer, and like those transitions where you can have people at the side while the video is being played, like that's probably a bit better, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm planning. I'm just doing okay. If I do banners, let's see what that does. This is an example of a banner. Let's see what we get here. Oh, oh, cool. Okay. Well, all right. So this is kind of cool. So I can see the comments. I see right here. Mr. Parker just said, "Hey, y'all." Hey, Mr. Parker.
Do you just click on that and it makes it a banner?
Yeah, I just clicked right on his cool. What he said, and then I can hide it. So you haven't done StreamYards yet?
No, I've not really tried it out. No.
Yeah, this is the freebie version, and so I just might keep the freebie version for a while.
Is there a limit on streaming with the free version?
Oh, there is 20 hours a month.
Okay.
So that's the catch. So, and I see, I just want to say hi to people in the audience. So I see Jesse camping, and you were in the audience, Mr. Parker, and Inspiring Christianity. So we'll also go ahead and put him here. Jesse camping. We've got a good crew here. There was Nathan, of course. All right. So you can see I'm totally just playing around with this. So good to see everybody here. Let me go ahead and hide that now. So we're going to talk about the secular value of religion. And so Craig Reed asked a pretty interesting question. He was basically saying, and he's going to come in here pretty soon, but he made a video on the secular value of religion. And he said that there's a lot of evidence that religion is good. And even as he pointed out that Nietzsche said it's the opiate of the people. And so the question though, and this is from the perspective now, I believe you're an agnostic right now. So the question is if religion is good, or if we take that religion is good, the question that Matt Dillahunty would pose, and that's what Craig Reed pointed out, is does that mean it's true? Like just because it's good doesn't mean it's true. And so because I would say that maybe the Muslim faith to some extent is good. Maybe it keeps people. I just noticed with some of my friends who are Muslims, they're very what's the word to this? They're very self-controlled around things like food and drink. They won't even drink any alcohol or anything like that. And so there might be certain benefits to certain faiths, but does that mean that the Muslim faith is true? And I would say no. Now Craig would say, well, does it mean that certain aspects of the Muslim faith are true? And we have to probably parse out what some of those aspects would be. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex question, isn't it? I definitely, like on the face of it, I think just because there's some like positive outcomes or whatever, does that mean that it's true? Obviously not in that same sort of way. Like, it's possible to think of all sorts of delusions that people might have that could have positive effects in their lives. Like I might have a brain tumor that makes me think that everyone likes me or something, and then
yeah, that's true.
I don't know, and then it's like, well, that's kind of good in some ways, bad in some ways, but it suddenly isn't true that everyone likes me or something like that. But
what? Who likes you? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. How you doing, Craig?
You and a bunch of static, Craig.
Who's the static? You're static from you or static from
I think it's you. It sounds like you're in the Big Bang or something.
Yeah, you do have a little static in the background. It sounds like you're in the rain a little bit.
Oh, it might be the fan. Dang. I was hoping the fan wouldn't be noisy because I kind of need it. It's really hot here.
Yeah, it's hot here too. I went on a bike ride. I've been trying to do a 2-hour bike ride every day for the past few days, and I did one today. And I'm telling you, it's like 100 degrees outside, and just covered with sweat by the time I get home. It's crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine. How long is a 2-hour bike ride? How many? Do you have any idea how many?
2 hours.
You know what? I actually should be tracking it. I used to track it on my phone. I used to have this little tracking thing, and I should probably turn that back on so I could figure out how many miles it is, because I have no idea. I know that my neighborhood has about 50 miles of bike paths, and I just went around and around, and I went into other neighborhoods, and I just listening to YouTube videos, listening to your YouTube video, Craig. I was listening to that today.
That's like perfect for your health.
Yeah.
I jog. I do 3 to 4 miles when I do it. Is that a decent amount? I'm not even sure.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
It's 3 to 4 miles more than I jog.
Yeah, that's true.
I hate jogging.
I was thinking, is the static gone?
It's still there a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit.
Is it gone now?
Still a little bit there.
Oh, then I don't know what it is.
Oh wait, now it got louder.
Yeah, when you talk, it gets louder. But
is it still here?
A little bit.
All right, let me see.
So you had Inspiring Christianity. I did hear a little bit of his chat last night, and I also heard Nate actually listened to one of your channel. You had I forgot the name of the guy, but it was a doctor.
Stephen Law?
No, it wasn't Stephen Law. It was one just before that.
Bernardo Kastrup.
Yes, I heard a little bit of him, and so that was interesting too.
How did you get Dillahunty? Did you just ask him and he said fine?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
How'd you get in contact? Email or how? Because you get some pretty good guests. Are you just more assertive about approaching them or something?
I mean, it just kind of depends. Like, like most academics have their email on the university website, or if people write like papers and books, like they might have contact details in those papers and books. And so I just kind of follow up with them, and I just make sure that I have like a weird subject line so that it gets read, and then just send the emails. Yeah.
So you basically just sent Dillahunty an email, and he said, "Yeah, he'd do it."
Well, Dillahunty in particular, I actually was in like a live stream thing, and I said to him, just if you'd be interested in coming on, how could I contact you? And he said, just send me a message on Facebook. So I did.
Gotcha.
So that one was a bit different. But
yeah, that's interesting. I don't think he'd come on my channel.
I think he might. Scott Clifton came on your channel.
Scott Clifton likes coming on my channel.
That's a selling point.
He's been on there a couple points. Say Scott Clifton came on, so will you come on? Because you should see what did you see what he was writing in the comments in the last debate? What I was writing and what he was writing back?
No, I did not. Which debate was the John McClatchy one? On Friday.
Because there was the part where. Oh my gosh! I saw it towards after John McClatchy left, and they were calling him a rage quitter, and then he came back and he said it was because Matt kept cutting him off. But that's the part where I first joined, and so I get in there and I'm listening to Matt, and I think to myself, he sounds really testy. So
he quit. He rage quit this debate from Friday?
Jonathan did, yeah, in the middle of it, and then he came back.
I gotta check that out. Did you guys see the Godless Girl debate with T Jump?
Oh my gosh,
I can imagine.
Crazy.
Well, this has been going on for months between them, hasn't it? Like they've been. She keeps going.
She was pairing up with him though.
No, she paired up with him. She was so demented.
Oh
my
really?
God. Yeah, her opening statement is like from another planet. She's like, And what is that? You're just being an effing blanking jerk, man. I mean, I can't even imagine. And it's just gibberish. What you guys are saying is just gibberish. I'm like, oh my God, this is so.
Oh wow, that sounds
so
just like
insane.
her, actually.
I've seen a very funny video of her like beating someone up in like a Taco Bell or something. Like
She puts those videos out there. She puts these crazy videos of herself. Like she calls herself welfare woman or something like that. And she took like a welfare check to the store and bought lobster with it and then fed it to her dog. And
she's like it's like that oh, who was that one that was like the Catch Me Outside, How About That meme? She like trying to do like that same thing. Yeah.
Catch Me Outside, how about that? That
I
thing
haven't
was
even
like
seen that.
everywhere.
Cardi B, that's it. Yeah, she's kind of like trying to get famous in the same way, maybe, or
Wow. Yeah. So let's. Well, actually, I want to say what happened. So in the thing with Matt Dillahunty, because this is kind of has to do with the secular value of religion, because he doesn't. I don't remember if he does acknowledge or he doesn't acknowledge the secular utility of religion, but I do know
I don't
that
think he tends to. He tends not.
He does when pressed.
Yeah, he debated Inspiring Philosophy, and Inspiring Philosophy brought in a lot of facts on that. But before I say that, so I wanted to say what I said to Matt in the video when he was debating. I said, "You seem a little testy," or I said, "Matt Dillahunty seems testy," and I didn't think he was even looking at the chat. And he finds a chat, and he's like, "What do you mean I'm testy?" And I'm like, well,
What do you mean testy?
I said, it's the tone of your voice. You seem testy. And then all of a sudden he did change his tone towards the end. He started, and I said, you're not the happy, friendly guy you are when you're on Shannon Q's channel. So it was funny, but anyway, so that was, and then he said something at the end. So I actually paid $15 to make a couple of comments on the modern day debate, and one of them was to ask him the exact same question I asked him on the atheist experience when he hung up on me.
Oh wow, that's funny.
I've seen a really funny one once on one of Capturing Christianity's streams. Someone paid like $100 to ask a question. And the person who was being interviewed just like went, yes, as the answer. It was just like, yeah.
Oh, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. So I wanted to say, so we know the health correlates of religion. I want to say I've got this little paper that I'd written a long time ago. And so I did find a lot of meta-analytic studies that basically show that intrinsic religiosity is very healthy, but extrinsic, it's kind of mixed. And so
You should start the stream.
I thought I started the stream.
Yeah.
Oh, we're on air?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
Craig.
wow.
Yeah, you shouldn't have been gossiping about everyone. And
I was late, and I'm just, oh wow, I've been on air the whole time. I was like, it's a good thing I didn't say anything embarrassing. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to say, well, I do see you had Inspiring Christianity. I don't know if he's still here, but he was in the chat just a second ago. And so you had him on your channel last night. So how did that go?
Wait, you just roboted. What did you say?
Oh, I roboted?
you didn't for me. I think it was.
You had Inspiring Christianity on your channel last night. I just was going to ask you how that went because he's in the chat.
Oh, Inspiring's in the chat right now. You're still roboting, but I think I got the gist of it. Yeah, it was fun. He's young. He's new to Twitter and YouTube, and he's like, I think he's 18, and he was raised as like a young Earth creationist, and he's kind of, it's cool because he's excited. You know, it'd be really fun to be that age and have access to Twitter and YouTube, because he's like learning all this new stuff, and he's interacting with, like, you know, sometimes you interact with pretty high up people, especially for an 18-year-old, you know. And he's like he's kind of exploring all these different angles and learning all these new things and changing ideas about what he thought was true, like basically all the time. So it was fun. He's a good kid. Right now in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still here. Inspiring, if you're still here, say hi. I want to say hi to also to John Lloyd. And you said, what is this? You're making a presentation. What were you saying there, Nathan?
Well, just that I think roughly some of the things you're talking about, I mean, not. So I think a different question to does something being good mean that it's true? I would probably argue yes, but that's because like I'm using a different good in a different sense to I think what you mean. But I'm making a presentation about like what religion and well-being. And just in that, I've also been exploring some of these questions as well, and pulling together some things from some studies and stuff that might be relevant to what we're talking about. But
Yeah, well-being, actually, I'll tell you, there's a meta-analytic study of 147 independent studies by Smith, McCullough, and Pohl in 2003 found that found that religiosity is associated positively with psychological well-being, and further indicated that positive religious coping, positive God's concepts, and intrinsic religious motivation were negatively associated with depressive symptoms. So there's some pretty good, I mean, there is some pretty good stuff out there. I could go on and on, but the studies basically say the same sorts of things. As I said before, intrinsic religiosity, though, is one of the things that you have to distinguish, because that's having an intrinsic sense that God is real and that sort of thing, versus extrinsic, which is sort of using church for what benefits it provides you with community and that sort of thing.
Craig.
Oh, we just lost Craig.
Yeah, I think one of the, so I think I actually laid out on my second slide as well some of the conditions that you'd have to show, for example, to say that it's particularly connected to an individual religion. So you'd have to show, for example, like, because a lot of these studies are saying the word religion, right? But what does religion mean? And you'd have to show how, for example, one particular religion, so let's say Islam, just to take it off Christianity because you're a Christian, has this benefit and which isn't accessible to the other religions, or that these loads of static there, Craig.
Still?
Yeah, I don't know what's.
Yeah.
Because you guys were roboting, so I cut out and then I came back.
I think it's maybe your connection there, Craig, because SJ was okay for me. Or she's that way on the. Yeah, SJ was okay for me.
So who did Inspiring Christianity? Who did he get on? Because he says it's great how many high up people you can contact and interact with on Twitter. It's really amazing. I mean, I've had some really cool people on my channel. I can mention I've had Dr. Michael Brown, Gary Habermas, Mike Lacona, Lydia McGrew, Tim McGrew. I mean, Nancy Piercy, a whole bunch of really cool people. And so I think that's pretty exciting. I don't know. And I'm going to have Michael Heiser on my channel on September 16th. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Lydia and Tim won't speak to me. They won't.
They won't? Really?
No.
Did you ask him?
Yeah, I don't think. I don't know. I don't think Tim likes me very much. Basically.
Did you have him on your channel before or something?
No, I think they were aware of me when I was a Christian. So then when I deconverted, they really didn't like that, and so they don't want to talk to me really.
Oh, wow! Now Craig is in here again. He's got himself on mute though. It looks like. So.
Yeah, I'm muting just when I'm not talking. So, is it still that static that you guys are talking about?
A little bit, but it's not as bad as it was before.
Okay, because now I can hear you. You guys were roboting originally.
Yeah, it might be kind of a crazy connection. So what's out of curiosity? You're over in England, right, Nate?
That's right.
So what's the weather like out there today?
Well,
raining.
We've been in.
Well, it's raining.
It
will be raining later today.
I think we've been in like a low.
Raining.
We had like a heat wave recently. So we've been in like an area of low pressure, and then there's been like the weird kind of tropical rain that you get when that kind of comes to an end. We've had a few kind of instances of that and thunderstorms over the past week as well. So it's been kind of intermittent heat wave weather and tropical rain kind of weather in the UK. And today's been a bit more mild though on that front. No like massive thunderstorms or anything like that.
We've been getting storms every day down here, Florida. That's pretty much our summer. I just noticed I had myself labeled as test. This is all new for me. So yeah, you still got a little bit of static there, Craig. I don't know if maybe when you're not talking, just mute it.
I'll try to walk around.
That might.
Is it better?
I'll walk around
a little bit better. So basically, the big question is if we can point to the secular utility of religion. I mean, do you guys see religion as having value? Do you think that? Do you think that some of the atheists who think that the world would be better without religion, like if you talk to a Sam Harris type, he would say the world would be better without religion. Do you agree with that?
I mean, I think it really depends what someone means by that, right? Like, I think could the world be better without religion? Yes, but like, does getting rid of religion just guarantee that? No, I think Yeah, I think it's a much more complicated question than that. Like, I think it'd be possible to take religion out of the equation, but then arguably, some of the things, it depends how are we defining religion? Because like arguably, like the way that people hold like political stances or subscribe to a certain sports team is like, from an anthropology or a psychology point of view, can be religion in that sort of sense. So it's a much more difficult. I think a lot of those new atheists, very intelligent people, but some of them have, like, from where I'm coming from, an overly dogmatic view of like what religion is. And I'd even class like certain types of atheism and humanism as like a religion from a naturalistic standpoint. They're human beings enshrining their values in a particular way, forming a community and that's very much the same as how they would view what Christianity is or what Islam is. And
yeah, I go back to, and somebody just mentioned I would love to have Tom Holland or Vanderklay on my channel, by the way. I would love to have those two. I think Craig's had Vanderklay on his channel, but I'd love to have Tom Holland in particular. Because you have, I'll have to ask him, because I'd like to have him and Vanderklay, but I'd like, Tom Holland wrote this book called The Dominion. And if anyone hasn't read it yet, it's a gigantic book. I think it's like 2,000 pages, but it's amazing. It's really good. And it talks about how the world has really changed since Christianity came about. And he documents how people treated, people valued the rich back in the ancient times. They thought the poor were cursed by God. So if you were poor, you were really mistreated in a lot of ways. You weren't given equal rights necessarily. If you're poor, you were given worse sort of punishments for crimes than if you were wealthy. And that's documented in places like the Code of Hammurabi. And so there's a lot of stuff that Christianity sort of brought to the table for societies, where it basically said that all men are created in the image of God. And so that brought value to people as individuals, and that changed this value of the collective, as far as working for the collective versus working for an individual. Yeah. And then Christians went about opening hospitals and schools and a lot of things over the years and really bringing a lot of value.
Yeah, that's can you hear me? Am I muted?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one of the things that Peterson talks about a lot, is that prior to Christianity, there was really no justification for the intrinsic value of a human being. And a lot of secular, I'm pretty sure Nathan probably agrees with that aspect of secular humanism, that each person has certain inalienable rights. But that's an idea that emerged out of Christianity. Like, everyone is born in the image of God, and that's part of the predicate for what those rights. So thus everybody is a child of God.
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
What SJ was saying. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
go ahead.
No, is that what SJ was saying or what I was saying? Sorry, I wasn't sure.
I think you're saying, well, humanism has actually, if you go to secular humanism, if they had documents, they would correspond to anything that Christians believe. And I think that they kind of smuggle in Christian values without acknowledging the source of why they're like that. Because if you look at any sort of documents in say, like, if you go into American atheist groups and you go into these groups and you read some of the About Us information, you're going to find that a lot of their values are very similar to Christian values. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and that's steeped in our Declaration of Independence too. So thank you, writer John Buck. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. You wanted to give John a shout out for his donation.
Thank you, writer John Buck. In fact, I know what I can do now that I have this. Woohoo! I love that I have this.
Do you think, SJ, if there was historically, say, a philosophical group or religion that was prior to Christianity chronologically, on the historical timeline, and sorry, Craig, the static's really noisy. Would you mind? Could you mute? Chronologically prior, and they had certain values that then Christianity adopted later that, say, weren't in Judaism. Would you say, well, Christianity borrows from this other worldview without adopting the foundation, the source? Do you think you'd say?
I would say that Christianity has some of the values. I mean, some of the values that you see from Aristotle, Plato, and Stoicism and that sort of thing. Christianity does. It was a product of its environment, so it had some values that are contrary, but it definitely has some of the same values and beliefs of.
I guess what I mean is, when you talk about humanism in that way, you kind of saying that it sort of undermines the project of humanism, that they don't acknowledge the source of Christianity. Well, Christianity must be more true. And I'm wondering, like, well, wouldn't that work the same way with, you know, if you could show, well, Christianity's adopting from Aristotle or something else, like you said, well, couldn't you say, well, Christianity is just borrowing from these things without acknowledging the source? And there, you know, shouldn't that argument, you know, it's a two-edged sword, like the Bible says.
Yeah, you'd have to look at exactly what it's unique, like what makes it unique from the other faiths that we know of. And I know if John Lloyd is mentioning a bunch, he says, do you know Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, where'd that go? Confucian. Oh, I have to just put it over here on the thing so we can look at it.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Do you know Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, Confucian, Christian, Taoist, and Jew or atheist, agnostic that ended slavery in the UK? This was well before. My understanding is the Christians ended slavery in the UK and led by Wilberforce.
William Wilberforce.
Wilberforce. Yeah. And so that's
it's always more complicated than it gets painted, you know, like there's also, you know, Christians who are for, like, it's not an explicitly, it's not a black and white issue. Like I think some theists want to paint certain events as if Christianity has only ever been used to justify the good things. And it, you know, there have been many Christians who have, but it also, and I think this is one of the problems with arguing from utility to truth as well, is that if you connect religion to these good things necessarily, then you also connect it to some of the bad things as well. And I don't think, I just think the truth of it is independent of the utility, essentially. Like like I was saying before, you can come up with all these sort of thought experiments of things, of cases where people are clearly deceived by something, but it does good for them, you know, like or you know, like pigeon superstition, where people have like a certain pair of socks that they wear for the game and it helps them to perform better, but you know, in reality it's not like that the socks are making them perform better. It's like so something being useful or whatever doesn't necessarily, and then there's this wider question as well of like, so that's in the subjective well-being respect. And then this other thing called objective well-being, which would be like, say, access to healthcare, education, social mobility and stuff. Like you could make arguments, for example, that like Nazi Germany had really good objective well-being in certain aspects, right? But we'd say that's predicated on like the lie of like the Aryan myth, and there's all sorts of ways that was false and wrong, but you can still argue that like in a utilitarian perspective, like it was better for certain classes in certain ways. And so I guess I'm more careful to divorce those concepts of like truth and utility in that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's well, in the studies, a lot of times they talk about subjective well-being. That tends to be the focus, and that's a combination of happiness and life satisfaction. And so you can find the World Value Surveys is one place that people can go, and they've got 6 waves of data since the 1980s that give a lot of information about what people are thinking around the world. And it's all it's free information. You can get all that, and you can actually isolate happiness and life satisfaction, and that's subjective well-being. But the interesting thing about that is it also naturally corresponds to things like your income, your health. I mean, it's really highly related to health. Yeah. And you'd expect that. What's interesting is it's not necessarily, there's not a consistent relationship if you have kids. It's kind of sad. And but people tend to be happier if they're married. So there's a lot of interesting things. Now, why I'm bringing that up is because Matt Dillahunty used to use this Gregory S. Paul study, and he doesn't use it anymore. And what the study did was it had a univariate analysis of only religiosity and happiness, something related to those two variables. I don't remember if it's exactly happiness or subjective well-being or what it was, but it was. And he said, well, yes, this turns out that some of the European countries tend to be the happiest, and they also might be more atheist. And I thought to myself, yes, but you didn't include what European countries have. They've got very big social safety nets. They've got very high levels of income, per capita. They've got a lot of different things that weren't taken into account. And then, of course, it looked at the countries like in Africa, where people tend to be wholly religious, or in South America, where there's lower levels of income. When you don't control for those kind of important control factors, your findings are spurious. And so that's why Matt, I think, finally decided to throw away that study and not reference it anymore.
And I think there's like a cheap atheist jab in there where you can go, well, of course, the more enlightened and better societies are the ones which are doing better on these scales and people are happier. And it's, the superstitious backwards African countries that have, are lower on the happiness index. And that, but I agree that there's, I think actually there's just too many factors at play to really like extrapolate out like one of these things. And it's just too complex.
Well, also the can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Does it sound okay?
It sounds good.
This is the first
better than
time
it was.
I switched headphones, and if I have a problem again, I'm going to switch phones. But I think this. So the other thing is the European societies that they always cite emerged out of Christendom, and it's really too early to tell to make any definitive statements about what developing secular society says for the long term. Like 300 years from now, we can know, because there are things that are starting to happen in European societies that probably are correlated, can't know for sure, to their lack of religion, to their secularism, like declining marriage rates, declining birth rates. So there's, in order to see what's really going on with like Norway or Denmark, you'd have to study them for the next 200 years or so, because they just started to become secular societies, roughly speaking, like 50 years.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think that's definitely fair. They're still benefiting on the fumes of Christianity. But
Yeah,
I'm wondering
I'm
about,
not sure about that one.
inspiring.
I think
just
you'd
want
have
to say
to look
something.
longer. Yeah, sorry, SJ.
No, I want to say something really quickly before I forget. Islam is interesting, and I've noticed a lot of Muslims who have moved into Europe, and I'm wondering, do you, Nathan, as a person who lives in Europe, do you think that do you think Muslim or Islam will take over Europe essentially?
It's a very difficult question, and I don't know nearly enough about Islamic theology to like in the same sense that within Christianity, like there's a big difference between like Roman Catholics and Baptists, and I don't know enough about Islam to really get into that. And I can't be sure to what degree, like I have biases because it's just a different culture and stuff like that. I certainly do see cultural differences, some of which are irreconcilable in some ways, at least seemingly to me. And I guess that I think what it is almost like it's kind of like you see the same thing with like the alt-right and why that is so like enticing to people, because it's like over here we have certainty and something to fight for, and it's like I think Islam can provide that same thing for a lot of people who feel kind of disenfranchised in a modern society which doesn't make sense, and there's so much there's like fake news and weird like meaningless jobs, and Islam can go, well, here's an answer, that's something to fight for, something that makes sense. And a lot of people get pulled into that, especially young men with anxiety, right? And so I see people like Ali Dawar, Mohammed Hijab, and the type of Islam that they encourage, where it's almost less about the rationality of the arguments they make, and it's more about, look, we're tough guys fighting for truth, and like people get on board because of that. And there can be an attitude of like the way they're looking at the world is like it's us versus them, but the them is like white European kind. Like they are dividing it along those lines, and have their version of the jihad is to have more babies, but this is not everyone. Like I've got like a friend who I train with who's a Muslim, and his version of Islam is completely different to that. Like he's just kind of, that's where he grew up, he's proud of where he's from, he's probably likes the food from his culture more than he cares about like any of that sort of. And so I don't want to paint everything with that brush. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, one of the potentially destructive things that's going on is that, unlike in the United States, when cultures tend to move to the United States, we have a history of assimilation. So like, cultures tend to get Americanized and secularized to a certain degree. And in Europe, I don't know if it's as true of England because there's a bit more cosmopolitan, but in France, they're having problems with this, and they're going to start having this everywhere, where the Muslims are sticking to Muslim towns, so it's almost like they're building countries within a country, and eventually that's going to be really problematic if it isn't already now. People are saying it's already now, but like they're not.
Yeah.
It's probably less true of England because England has the history of, you know, global domination, basically, when they've always had immigrants coming in.
I think that sort of stuff does happen, but I also don't know how much of that is fueled by like fake news or kind of like alt-right sources who want to sensationalize. And but you know, like if you see Lauren Southern's sort of deconversion from the right way alt-right media, where she talks about how one of the last things she was doing was this documentary on how migrants are all coming over to Europe. And in that process, it humanized the migrants for her, who had been like this evil other of just, you know, they're all Muslims who hate the West or whatever.
Right, but that's not actually what I'm talking. What I'm talking about is that in places like France, there are enclaves of. There's a little bit of it in the United States too. Like when the Italians came over, I'm an Italian immigrant, okay, or at least on my mother's side. So when Italians came over, we had Little Italy, which was like an independent enclave of Italians. But eventually those go out into the society, and like nobody would ever think of my mother as different than an American. Happens also with Hispanics, every group that comes in here. What's not happening in some European countries is because of how Muslim culture is so tight knit, and there's more of them coming in, and they're building communities that are almost separate almost separate nations. That will potentially be destructive. That's a different thing than like the social tensions you're talking about in England between like, I guess, the Yabs and the Muslims. You know, I'm not even sure like what's going on.
It's very.
What's the percentage? What percentage? I mean, do you know about how many Muslims are in your area?
Well, it varies by area. So like there are particular areas that have like really, you know, like I'm sure it's the same as that, you know, like if you go to Boston or wherever in America, it's like a particularly high immigrant community or whatever. And so like places like Bolton or Birmingham and stuff like there's that sort of like Craig's saying, but I just want to be careful of saying that there's definitely this sort of in-group, out-group, because I just don't know enough. I don't know enough of the evidence and stuff to say. But that like there are high populations of Muslim communities in certain areas around like Manchester or around Birmingham, around London. I don't know as a percentage, but it is definitely on the increase. And again, like I see from some of the more extreme Muslim groups, people putting out things about, you know, how they're going to out reproduce the white people and take over the country that way. And I don't know. I don't know what the actual data is on numbers of births and like. And I think I think people are leaving as well. Like they grow up in it and they realize like, well, the way it is over here is actually better than like, I don't want to arrange marriage and all this crap. Like I'm gonna.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Like in the United States, in for example, here in LA, you have like every type of nationality, and there's a huge Persian. When the Shah fell, there was a huge influx of Persians. So I actually know a lot of Persians just from some of them attended church here, there, and like what, you know, the person does my wife's hair. Now there's varying degrees. A lot of them are totally westernized. So they're completely integrated into the society. But they were a much bigger, like they were better educated populace. They were more, you know, so they integrated really easily. When you have like waves of immigrations that don't necessarily integrate and they stick to themselves, that's potentially going to create a problem. It's creating tensions now, but if it gets big enough, you know, it could create a problem. It's not a problem if people blend, like with a lot of the Persians, they're indistinguishable from, you know, Persian culture is just kind of like the food, what you said, like the food and the dress and things like that, but they become indistinguishable from America in terms of American values, secular values. You know, they're into democracy. They're not trying to put Sharia law. Do you know what I mean? They're totally integrated in that sense.
They're only 1% too. Is just another thing
That's
to know.
why
In the United
easier.
States, very small
in
percentage.
France, it's something like 10. It's starting to hit big percentages.
Yeah, that's where it's a big representation. I'll tell you, at my school, we have a lot of Muslim students at my school. And every class I have, especially in the summer, because they tend to stay here over the summer, not go back to their home countries. A lot of them are from places like Kuwait. I have tons of Kuwaiti students. I've had tons of Saudi Arabian students. I have some from the UAE, Dubai mainly. And one of the things is their governments pay for them to come over here and get educated. And I think that's so interesting. I see Inspiring Christianity's here. Their governments pay. Yeah, he's
in the
joining.
chat? Oh,
yes. Cool. And Jesse, I want to quick answer this before we say hi. I haven't investigated the Eastern trade routes for slavery and how that began. I know in the United States, I think it was around 1620 that we started bringing slaves over here in a horrific manner, and none of us are for that at all. So just want to say that. So I should look into the Eastern groups too. So, hi, Inspiring Christianity. I heard you last night on Craig's channel.
Yeah, that was one of my first live streams. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed that.
That was fun. It was good.
So, who are these big names you've been able to talk to on Twitter?
Well, I've talked a lot to like Ian Mills, Laura Robinson, John Depew, and a bunch of other of those type of people, which I have really enjoyed. So. It's been a good time.
You. I was trying to remember where I've seen you, because I've seen you on Twitter. I've seen you in a few different conversations, and I was trying to remember who the people I've seen you discussing, and I couldn't remember today because I was thinking, who have I seen him? And now I remember it was Laura Robinson and Ian Mills, and I'm see, I don't like some of the stuff they put out. So I'm an antagonist to them. So.
You know, I spur a lot of controversy on Twitter. I think one of my last tweets I did in the middle of the night, so I was hoping that it didn't spur too much. But I said Islam was a religion of peace, and immediately there was 25 comments and 1 like on it, and a bunch of people were getting mad that I said that. So I found that kind of funny.
That's what funny. You tweeted out. Islam is a religion of peace.
Yeah, I said, by the way, Islam is a religion of peace. And then. Immediately, a bunch of people were commenting, and what I find funny is I find the exact arguments that you would make that Islam is a religion of violence and torture and all that stuff is the same arguments you could make by Christianity. You could say, oh, look at the Crusades, look at all this, and that's the same arguments that I see people making against Islam. And I just kind of find it funny that when I hear Christians arguing against Islam and they're this awful, evil, backwards religion, I just see the same arguments that atheists make against Christianity. And I find it kind of ironic that they're making the same argument just against a different religion in that aspect.
You know, the irony is the Crusades were established because they were trying to push the Muslims back, because the Muslims were actually encroaching on the lands of a lot of Christians. So Christians took up these Crusades to push them back. And that's the
arguably
irony.
Maybe the first, maybe the later ones are more for profit and greed and.
Yeah, we do have a history where we definitely have some negative things that happened in the past. But as far as the Muslim faith, we should remember something that distinguishes it from Christianity is it began as a religion of taking over lands and a religion of warriors. And you can find that in any secular textbook. However, Christianity began in peace up until, after Constantine legalized it in 313. After that, we started seeing some of this bad stuff and the bad actors out there. But prior to that, you had a very a religion based totally on peace.
Yeah, but to me, you can see in Judaism or King David, people often bring out how Muhammad was this awful warlord, rapist, murderer who did all this. I'm look, King David was the exact same person. You can't be arguing that Islam is awful because it started.
Come over to my side.
Yeah, you said. Now this is funny. So you were raised a YEC. You were raised a young Earth creationist, and so now it sounds to me like you're dipping your toe into the atheist ideas. That's what.
I wouldn't say this is atheist ideas. I would be no, but my mind is I don't need to say that a religion is this awful, violent thing. I can say Islam. I know a couple of people when I said Islam was a religion of peace, would be oh wow, you said. There isn't the minimal facts argument isn't good for the resurrection. And now you're saying Islam is a religion of peace. It's I can say that a religion is of peace and still not be converted to it. I think most religions are religions of peace, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go convert to that religion. something can be a piece and have good effects, but that doesn't make it true. So
I can say it. The Muslims I know, as I mentioned, I've got a lot of them in my school. I get at least 5 or 6 of them in each class I teach, and they come from other countries, as I mentioned. But they're very peaceful people. They're very good people. A lot of them have a lot of self-discipline, and so I have to say that's pretty impressive. But the Muhammad himself, and I see your comparison to David. You can compare Muhammad also to people like Solomon or some other ones in the past. And we know David had Uriah killed because he wanted to marry Bathsheba. And so that wasn't exactly a good actor. So the Bible's full of bad actors in the Old Testament, especially. And so, but the difference is with Muhammad, had 12 wives, and one of them he got married to when she was 6, and he when he was 53, he decided to consummate the marriage when she was 9. That's a little. I mean, that's challenging. I don't know how the Muslims get past some of that kind of stuff.
But like King David was the apple of God's eye, and God was the one who like made him king, but he still raped Bathsheba, he still murdered people, he was still a warlord. So to make this comparison to Islam, which there was a golden age in Islam where they advanced the sciences, advanced the maths, advanced all this stuff, and there was very many good things that flowed out of Islam, just like there's many good things that flowed out of Christianity in the Middle Ages. So I think this gut reaction against Islam, which was very similar to Christianity in almost all aspects, before the 17th century, when I think some of Christianity more like modernized a bit, and then Islam, at least in the Middle Eastern countries, they kind of, I think the extremists or the ones, the revisionists kind of took over. But like you go to most Islamic scholars, like I just don't think it's a good argument that Islam is like this backwards and evil thing.
Well, yeah,
sorry, you can go.
I mean, I can say one of the reasons why I think the Saudi kings and some of the other people are sending students over to our country is because they want to westernize a lot of their ideas. They don't like some of the Sharia law, and maybe they don't like some. I mean, I think that they're trying to get away from some. For example, in Saudi Arabia, just a couple of years ago, women finally got the right to drive a car. Okay, that's a little backwards. I mean, just come on. A couple of years ago, they weren't even allowed to drive a car. They had to have a man escort them anytime they wanted to go out to work. Essentially, a man would have to drive them to work. And so there are a lot of things going on in those countries. They still have problems sometimes with places like in Nigeria with Boko Haram, kidnapping kids. This is very recent. We've got people in Egypt, the Egyptian Coptic Christians being beheaded on the beach. There's a number of different people who are terrorist groups in that group. Now, yes, there are terrorists. You could say in Ireland, we've seen terrorist acts between 2 Christian faiths, the Protestants and the Catholics. And so we do have bad actors in history. But I would say that Jesus is the big difference between the faith of Christianity and the Muslim faith. I think just looking at what Jesus brought to the table is what differentiates us so much from that faith. And so that's the thing. We're trying to find Jesus, trying to find the truth. And we've had bad history, bad actors, slavery. I mean, Christians were involved with slaves. They were some of the ones who were slave owners, and they were chopping up the Bible to make sure that the verses that said that slaves and people are free and equal, and slaves who escape should be rescued and given shelter. Those sorts of things, the Christians who were bad actors had removed from the Bible.
But like even that, like the Bible, like with the Apostle Paul, even though there are verses that would say that the slaves should be free. I think Paul's wasn't as radical in the sense of abolishing slavery, because he did say slaves submit to your masters, which in that context likely meant that slaves who were raped or that would have to submit to that because and this would make sense because Paul did think that the world was going to probably end very, very, very soon, and Jesus was going to come back. So even though the Bible is I would say kind of anti-slavery in the New Testament and kind of progressive in the New Testament, there was still, it took a while for Christianity to progress to the point of the abolitionist movements we find today. But
No, you're right. They had slavery in the old times. Jesus didn't abolish slavery. It was part of their economic system in every single ancient society, not just the ancient Near East. That's all over the world. Slavery was a form of everyone's system to be able to function economically. So that's absolutely true. But Paul, you have to remember, we're considered slaves to Christ. And if we look at it that way, submitting to our masters is just basically saying you're not supposed to rock the political system. You're not supposed to rock the boat. You're supposed to just sort of go along with your life and try to act in a good way. There's a lot of stuff, though, about slavery in the Bible that is different from the slavery that we had, again, with antebellum slavery.
Well, yes, but like the antebellum slavery, especially in America, I think it's not the perfect representation of the slavery in the Bible, but it's probably one of the closest we have, because a lot of the people who did the slavery in America were likely using the Old Testament and using, like the Puritan society was using the Old Testament and were using some of the ideas in the New Testament to use that. So I wouldn't say it's absolutely comparable, but I would say it's the closest comparison you can probably get. But like, to me, that's not like a huge problem, because like it was, again, Christians who abolished slavery, like William Wilberforce and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I probably need to study this issue a bit more. I haven't looked into it that deeply.
Steph, John wants to come on. John,
okay. Oh, sure. Let me go ahead and I'll send him a link on Twitter. John, I'm sending you the link on Twitter.
Inspiring Christianity. I don't know if you don't want us using your like real name, right? Because
just call me Inspiring Christianity.
Yeah. So, am I right in saying you tweeted your tweet though in response to what was happening between Muhammad Hijab and apostate prophet and his wife, where Muhammad Hijab was like tweeting stuff out about like doing things sexually to her and how he wasn't a real man and stuff like that?
Yeah, like I would compare like Muhammad Hijab to like a Stephen Anderson. So
I'm not making the. I'm wondering if your tweet was in response to all that going on.
It wasn't. No, it was in response to something I saw on YouTube. Like I forget his name, but it was like the Oxford Union the debate I saw between is Islam a religion, a peace, and there was a back and forth, and I saw like a really good rebuttal to because like this is exactly what I grew up as. Right? I grew up as this with the idea that Islam is this awful evil religion that was backwards and was this warlord idea, and then I kind of progressed out of that, because I actually see the religion that I don't believe like Muslims are saved. I believe that you have to by Christ alone. But I would say if you're comparing religions, Islam is the closest you can get to Christianity in many aspects. If the idea of like monotheism, the idea of so that's just my thoughts though.
Yeah, and I don't think I agree with you. I don't think that we should try to portray other groups as evil. I definitely think the terrorists within those groups are evil, but not the overall, there's about 1.6 billion people on the planet who are Muslims, and they're certainly not all in the category of the terrorists. They're not, many of them scorn the terrorists. They're very unhappy with what those terrorists are doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I just see a lot of like Christian critiques of Islam as kind of like hypocritical, because I even seen like some as saying, oh wait, a Muslim in a Muslim country has to forcibly wear a head covering and they have to cover their face. Or how about like wait a minute, what did Paul say in the Bible about women wearing head coverings in church? It's like it just seems that like a lot of the Christian critiques are really, really, really bad, and I just don't understand where they're coming from, because
I want to say hi to all the people in the chat, by the way, and hi to John Buck. John's in here. Do you guys know you guys all know the three of you know each other. I don't know if Nathan.
John is Robin to my Batman. John is my little sidekick. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Nathan and John. John's
good
been
to
on
see you
Nathan's.
again, Stephanie. Yeah, I like that.
I want to say hi to the crowd too. I see Avira is Nathan's girlfriend. She's in the group, and Praise I Am. I saw a little bit of your video on Skylar and Digital Hammurabi. So it's like, we might have a little bit of back and forth in the chat to be watching. So interesting. So we were talking about slavery in the Bible. So that's what Nathan just pointed out, that Digital Hammurabi missed that. That's what he likes to talk about.
I was just going to maybe bring up something interesting I find with the whole secular utility of religion sort of debate that goes on. Because I think there's sort of almost a contrary parallel with Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism, where Plantinga tries to make the case that if naturalism and evolution is true, then all of our faculties would be for producing beneficial behaviors in the organisms rather than actually accurate or true, reliable faculties for beliefs. And so I find it kind of funny that when the skeptics are responding to the EANN or EAAN, they'll say that no, if something has like the only reason we'd have these faculties is because there's some sort of correspondence with truth within them. Like it's not the case that like if I believe that there's a tiger there and I run away, then that gives me credence for believing that there's actually a tiger there or something like that. And so the only beliefs that we'll have are going to be mostly true ones. That's how they will respond to Plantinga. But yet when the discussion turns around towards the secular utility of religion, that if religions such as Christianity or Islam or Mormonism, any type of religion that produces some sort of beneficial yield for the participants within the religion, the skeptics will sort of say instead that, oh, just because something is useful doesn't mean that it's good, or sorry, it doesn't mean that it's true. And so I don't know. For me, it seems fairly obvious that there's almost like a bait and switch going on the skeptics' part there between saying, oh, if something's useful, then it's most probably true in responding to Plantinga. And then on the other hand, saying, oh, if something just because something is useful doesn't mean it's true.
You know, sorry, you can go.
Oh, I was just going to say all religions, you know, I think that it does speak to the value of religion and worshiping a higher power. I do think that there's something to that, and that's probably the part that's true. I think we're hardwired to worship a higher power, and I think that we could even blend this with a little of Psalm 82. Have you guys taken a look at Michael Heiser's work with Psalm 82?
No, I haven't.
It's not in my version, unfortunately, so I won't be able to read it right, but it talks about the sons of God and how God basically has a divine council, and these sons of God went out and they were ruling all of these nations. These spiritual beings were in charge, and God retained Israel for himself. And then with Jesus, what they did was Jesus during the Pentecost had the Great Commission where he told his apostles to go out and reclaim all of those lands. So there were 70 lands, and one of them was Spain. And that's why Paul kept saying he had to get over to Spain. They wanted to go to all the lands and reclaim them for Jesus. Everything had been given to Jesus. And what's interesting about that is you say, well, where did all these other religions come from? Well, is it possible that there are spiritual beings that influence people all over the world? And maybe that speaks to why we have Hinduism and Muslim even, and even Mormonism. There could have been something that Joseph Smith had some sort of experience. I just think it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I think too often Christians will just sort of rely upon those just being like demonic influences or something like that. When I think there are probably more. It's possible, at least, that there are other types of influence than purely demonic or purely all good, maybe like neutral sort of beings or something like that are sort of creating their own religions or whatever. I don't know.
So can I address the first thing that you said? Yeah, like the second, when if we're talking about like Peterson, when he started studying religion and comparative religion, there's a lot of like, it doesn't really matter what the religion is. You can point to like the secular utility of having a value system. Like in Islam, there's all these warnings and admonitions against drinking, and it affects the culture on the ground level. So you go to like, Iraq, and there's no bars and there's very little alcohol being sold because of what's written in the Quran. So he started putting that type of thinking to work towards like the Bible and Christianity. And that's where he started leaning towards becoming Christian, because the question he started asking himself, and this is what I was trying to get at with my tweet from 2 weeks ago. I was trying to start a conversation along these lines, is that he started recognizing how useful Christianity was for the primitive societies, how it organized people, gave them purpose and meaning. It led to all this social cohesion. That's probably, you could explain that in rationalist terms. That's why Christianity started growing. So, if you don't believe in God, that's part of why Christianity started growing and starting to dominate. And then he started asking himself the most logical question is, how could something be so useful if it isn't rooted in some truth. Like,
are you referring to William James or Mircea Eliade?
I mean, he got the idea from William James and reading blah, 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 whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Mircea Eliade. But yeah, those are those.
Who was a Nazi,
he
I
was
think.
reading a lot of. He was reading a lot of those things when he was starting to talk about his ideas along those lines. So he was heavily influenced by him, for sure. He would say that, William James. But go ahead.
Yeah, Nathan, I know you've been itching to respond to
I'm
kind of
I'm
what I
just
laid out.
thinking about. Oh no, I'm just thinking about what you said. I think it's really interesting. Like, so you're saying, just so I'm understanding what you said, that the evolutionary argument against naturalism goes something like, if naturalism is true, we form mostly you beliefs that have utility rather than truth, and then the response to that is generally that we need some kind of true, we need some tethering to truth. Otherwise, we wouldn't be forming those. They wouldn't be useful at all. And then you're saying, well, when it comes to religion, then shouldn't it be the case that if it is useful, which most naturalists or studies, at least, if we're being honest, there's obviously anti-theists who are naturalists, would say that, well, religion does have utility. If you're a Marxist, it's the opiate of the masses, or if you watch an inspiring philosophy debate, intrinsic religiosity leads to these benefits or whatever. And so why is it then that they will respond to that? Is there like a double standard going on where it's just to defend their presupposition? They'll give with the right hand and take with the left, or whatever sort of thing. But I also, as you were saying, that the kind of skeptical response, I suppose, is something like like the difference between all and some in what you were saying. Like, I think that's maybe the important part, because I think that objection to the evolutionary argument against naturalism only needs it's saying that there needs to be some tethering to reality of utility. Like if it's just not connected in any way, then it's hard to see how something would survive with beliefs and things at all. Though obviously it's difficult to see why something would need to develop beliefs whatsoever. If why can't it just be an input process output machine? Why does there have to be a private internal representation at all? Anyway, is a separate question. But yeah, I guess the thing is that there's some tethering, but maybe not. It doesn't mean that therefore everything that has utility is that.
Yeah, that's a good response, and I think I want to clarify, since the Plantinga's argument is kind of complicated. It took me quite a few times before I could really kind of understand what it's getting at, and even then, there's probably more to it that I should learn. But I think the conclusion, I guess, to the argument is that if naturalism and evolution is true, then most of our faculties for belief will be unreliable. So, like, unreliable in the sense that it's not more likely to produce true beliefs than false ones. It's either equally likely or less than likely to produce true beliefs. And so it doesn't have to be the case that all beliefs that are useful end up being true. Just the fact that we're going to evolutionarily inherit these faculties for belief forming mechanisms that aren't necessarily going to be mostly true. So that's all that the conclusion is trying to make from Plantinga's side.
Yeah. I would like to point out that I'm sorry, but I would like to point out that the idea that. Okay, perfect. But the idea that we form that utility can be a useful thing for truth, that actually doesn't respond to the evolutionary argument against naturalism at all, because the evolutionary argument for naturalism, from my understanding, tries to prove that we have no rational justification for accepting our beliefs about naturalism, not that we don't have true beliefs. Even if naturalism and evolution can produce more true beliefs than false beliefs, we don't have any rational justification, because those beliefs are attuned for survival, not for truth. So even if survival leans more to truth than not to truth, that doesn't matter, because we wouldn't know any other way, because and we have no rational justification for believing that. At least that's my understanding. So I think the idea that truth can lead to, that utility can lead to truth, that's not an answer to the evolutionary argument against naturalism, from my understanding at all. But I could just be misunderstanding the objection and argument, like I usually.
I think you're actually you are right in what you're saying.
Yeah, you sound like you're
I
right.
suppose
That sounded right to me.
But I think the response to what you're saying, the response that John articulated would still apply to that argument. It would be something like that. Well, if it's not tethered to truth in any way, if it's not connected to the way things are in the world, then it would be very difficult to see how that would survive in any sense. Or I mean, I'm not putting it together in like a syllogism or something here, but I think that
has
response
to have truth value, or the idea isn't going to be useful even in purely like survival terms if it's just totally out to lunch. That's kind of what you're saying, right? So it's got to have
I think the response is
reality.
still well, I think that's the way that particular response goes.
So one of the things that you mentioned about anti-theists, see, you're different because you have some empathy towards the Peterson-esque and some of the stuff we're talking about, which puts you in a different category, because a lot of the anti-theists that like the dogmatic, like rabid anti-theists, wouldn't agree with anything we just said. They wouldn't say there's secular utility religion, really obviously. They argue against those points until they're forced to recognize that they're true. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get it immediately, which puts you in a different category of, oh God, what is that?
Sort of. I mean, so I get like I was saying before to SJ right at the start. I think like on the face of it, I can't see how so it's like something being attributed to well-being or whatever. Obviously just doesn't mean it's true. Like, you can easily just come up with all these cases where something like contributes to well-being but is like some weird brain shit. But the sort of thing that John's talking about there is an interesting question, because it's at a deeper level of, well, like on naturalism, why are we if we're saying, well, actually on naturalism we're forming true beliefs, right? And then it's like, well, one of the biggest things that people believe in is something like God, like this is a cross-cultural phenomenon or whatever. Then is there some reason to think that there might be something in it? It's almost like an actually well-articulated version of the C.S. Lewis, if we have desires for something that nothing in this world but
yeah,
there's also
there's an inference there that's pretty obvious. That's the same thing I was.
No, but I'm saying I find the C.S. Lewis argument like that to be really, really silly. Like, but I think the way that John's put it, like this is quite interesting. Like, if we're like, well, if people tend to form beliefs, like that this table is in front of me, that's because it obviously corresponds to truth in some sense. And it's like, well, 90% or 99% of people believe in that. And then you can show, well, cross-culturally, a really high percentage of people. I mean, there's obviously, it's going to break down at some point, but I'm saying it's a pretty interesting argument at the least. Yeah.
Right. Like, you can even say like, the fact that we have the faculty for recognizing other minds, there's an obviously like some sort of evolutionary sort of account of that, the theory of mind that would probably be tied to fitness for the organism. But that doesn't discount our beliefs that there are no other minds simply because we evolved this faculty. I think I guess it's kind of the case that like, if there is this faculty that we have within us that does well, I don't know, because I mean, if you wanted to be the ultimate skeptic, you could take on solipsism and say that even our belief in other minds is unjustified. But I don't think most people are really willing to bite that bullet. And probably from there as well, you could say that given that we have this faculty for recognizing other minds and is widespread within us, and then similarly, we have some sort of faculty for being aware of God's presence, or something like the numinous, like spirits or ghosts or things like that.
Yeah.
Which would, like, unless we're willing to discount our belief in other minds, then we should not be prima facie justified in discounting our beliefs in the numinous.
Well, I think there's another thing going on though here as well, which is, I mean, there are some things. There was one, I don't know if you know, Michael Behe argues for like irreducible complexity of certain evolutionary features, and the way that's been like debunked, and I hate using that word because of the way like skeptics use it. The way that's been debunked by like evolutionary biologists is to say, well, actually, the simple building blocks of this complex feature, they have evolutionary explanations, but then when that are separate, and then when they come together, they form this kind of complex side effect that was unintentional, but then it also happens to benefit the thing. And I think with when we're talking about like beliefs and natural selection, or like beliefs as a feature of mind that's brought about by natural selection, it's not always going to be that necessarily like every single feature of mind or every belief we have either is like something that was put there by some selection pressure, right?
Only the ones that can be selected for. Yeah, you're right. Like only the beliefs that would lead to some sort of action that would result in some sort of either being promoted or demoted within the world when put into practice. But other beliefs.
But it seems like it could be the case, at least. It seems kind of plausible that like minds could develop because of some particular selection pressure, and then there are beliefs about other things that form. If this is how that comes, but then they happen to be advantageous as well, and it's not like there's some kind of teleological end behind that's aiming at doing that, but it just kind of happens to be the case, and then it's even more advantageous as a result. I think it was flagellum on bacteria or something that were one of Michael Behe's things that were, like in this way, the little components were had like simpler explanations as to why they were useful, and then you put them together and you get a flagellum or something.
Right. So like a spandrel, is that like an evolutionary spandrel where the underpinnings, like maybe faculties, were beneficial to some extent during its evolutionary history, and then at some later point they've lost that sort of benefit, and it's
not exactly like, that. Sorry, like more like I don't know quite how to maybe like because I'm just gonna say something random, like I don't know. There's a spinny thing over here that is being selected for, and there's a spinny thing here, and then it just happens that they collide and like they both push on each other and it spins better, and that's like unintended, but it just happens to happen when they, like
right. And like that accidental account, I mean, I guess could be worked into the evolutionary argument against naturalism if you want it, I guess.
We need more like empirical evidence to say strongly that like this belief in God has come about because of this selection pressure. And I don't even think evolutionary biology, like a lot of it seems to me to be just so stories. Like it's like, oh well, it's almost like what I'm doing now. Like here's what could be the case, and like.
I want to say hi to Rob at Sentinel Apologetics. I want to make a quick comment. He was in the chat. We were both watching the Dillahunty debate with McClatchy, and both Rob and I were trying to put some super chats in there to get our questions in front of Dillahunty. And Rob, both times Dillahunty didn't really answer Rob's, and so Rob is typing in lazy.
Hey Rob, good to see you.
What was his question?
Yeah, absolutely lazy. Hey, am I in this? Because I'm just testing this out. I'm on my phone.
Yeah, you're here.
Yeah, you're here. I can hear you.
Okay. Like you can hear me clearly, or is it muffled?
I can hear you clearly.
Pretty good.
All right, sweet.
So what were you asking? Do you remember what you asked him?
Yeah, just sort of like my first observation, because he's going on about evidence, and I mean I get where he's coming from, but I find it quite curious that a lot of Second Temple scholars, even non-Christian Second Temple scholars, will just yawn at Dillahunty's remarks, and so that's pretty much my first super chat was, hey, Second Temple scholarship actually sympathizes a lot with evangelical scholars, and Dillahunty was like, so. that was his remark. And then I think the second, I forget now the second one. Oh, no, that's right. The second one was about Romans 3, about how I was recently doing a devotional on Romans 3, verse 25, where it says that God implies that Jesus died on, he had to die as understood even in the historical Jesus context. So if God is behind it, what's the rationale for the cross? And curiously, Paul says that there's some deep connection with the quote-unquote righteousness of God to be established, so that God is not a hypocrite. So basically, if the cross did not happen, according to Paul, then God is a hypocrite. And that's actually quite a remarkably powerful theological argument. So then my second super chat was, why doesn't these discussions include theology with the scientific details?
Yeah, no, I think I think those are good points. I just tried to, as I mentioned before, I made an embarrassing call 3 years ago to the atheist experience, and where Matt hung up on me. And so ever since then, every chance I get to ask the same exact question I asked him that, I keep doing it in super chats. It's like, I won't go away. He's like that pain in the butt who keeps asking the same question when he can't hang up on me.
You should see me driving now, so I'll put my light up just so you guys can see what's happening.
So you're driving. What time is it where you are?
It's currently 3:15 in the morning, so I'm just doing a quick run.
It seems like you're driving, not running.
So you're at 3:15 in the morning. Did you just get up, or have you been up all night?
3:15 in the morning, driving, doing a work-related chore, and I saw you online. Like I actually saw you. You're going to go live stream in like 20 minutes. I was thinking, yeah, I'll probably catch you guys later. And then sure enough, a whole hour later passes by, and I forgot to check it. So,
Wow. So you've been up all night. This is like.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you've got funny hours. You don't sleep very much, it seems like.
Yeah. I'll be sleeping soon.
Well, that's interesting. So my kids' sleep schedules got all messed up, and so
do I need to mute because it's the sound of the car muffling out you guys? Or?
I can't really hear the car. Yeah,
it's all right when you're not talking. When you're not talking, sweet. It's just quiet. Yeah, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. So we were talking a little bit about, obviously we're talking about secular value of religion, and where if you can say that we have secular value, it's good when people, it's good worldwide collectively if we take everybody together and we say that there's probably some positive issues with religion. And one of them is that if you look at all the world's basic religions, we all have this idea to follow the golden rule. It's said in different ways, but we're all under this same sort of moral duty to follow the golden rule and to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so you can find that even with the atheists, like the American atheists and the United Nations. And so this idea of being good to our fellow humans. And so I think that that's one place where religion definitely has value.
I think, in fact, I was having a discussion with a friend earlier today after church about Micah 6:8 that speaks about to have loving kindness, to walk humbly with God and have loving kindness. And we were having a pretty interesting discussion on the Hebrew terminologies, like chesed, love, and something again just kind of blew my mind because he knows Hebrew, so he's like, hey. In the grammar of the text, it's not so much that in fact, ironically, we were talking about the golden rule today. It's funny that you're discussing it now. And he said, isn't it interesting that this text says that you're meant to love this thing called kindness in order to then be kind to people. So it's not so much like a stipulation like, hey, God's ordering you to love your neighbor, like love your neighbor as yourself. It's a demand that you do that regardless of how you feel internally. And I find it quite beautiful that, hey, in order for you to love your neighbor, you need to first have that indwell within you, so that it becomes like an automatic response. So it's what's inside, like you are naturally inclined to be like that anyway, so that then you can establish that as action. And I think that really it is, again, a powerful application in regards to the Judeo-Christian application of basically how does the Judeo-Christian worldview engage that broad question, that broad statement of, hey, you know, the golden rule like is universal, it applies to everyone. Yeah, sure, but how do people explain that in their own worldview? And you know, the Judeo-Christian one is pretty powerful in that sense.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I just pulled out the Bible to look at Micah 6:8, so just to see what you were talking about. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. So I like that.
So to love mercy, and that's to love. It's literally to love kindness. Like it's like, yeah, am I going to be merciful? You know the whole like the Sermon on the Mount. You know, I tell you to bless your enemies, not to curse them, to love your enemies, turn the other cheek. Again, that what was Jesus actually getting at? So does your heart internally, the whole like, are you doing it as a work? Are you doing it as a chore to love your enemy, or is there something internally taking place naturally, like a natural love, for you to then automatically go, yeah, I'll still love you, I'll still bless you regardless of what to do. And that's something that is very hard to do, because guess what? We all have that in nature, and like what Romans 3 is getting at.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely interesting. So, and that kind of does speak to how Christianity was a little bit different, because Jesus came. I mean, how it's a little bit different from Judaism is Mosaic law versus the New Covenant, and how Jesus came. And it's been said here in the Old Testament, this, and this, but here's what I'm telling you to do. And he basically said, you have to forgive somebody who's trespassing against you. How many times? 70 times 7 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely.
For me, I like how like the golden rule, or that can be found like universally among most religions, even in like Hinduism, Islam, Buddha, and I like how it ties in that all religions has this idea that you should be treating your neighbor as you would treat yourself, and that you should be loving people unconditionally, no matter how they act.
Yeah. I do too. I like that. I actually, where I found that out is I was in a mosque, believe it or not. I was at one of these interfaith, what's it called? Interfaith tour things at a conference. And so we went into a mosque, and we went into a Hindu temple, and then we went to a Christian non-denominational church. And it was interesting. In the mosque, I saw this big poster that had all of the world religions and their version of what the golden rule would be. And so I took a picture of it. And so it's kind of cool. It kind of reminds me also of C.S. Lewis's book. There's a book that is at the end of my book of his. Do I have that up here? I'm trying to remember what it's called, but he writes on a lot of different world religions and how their views on some of the things are very similar to Christians' views. One of his books, I'm forgetting what it was called.
I want to say the abolition of man.
Yeah,
that's where it goes into
the
Tao, and how
like, all
religions have the Tao of some sort of like higher moral realm that they have to abide by.
Yes, that is the
the ultimate depiction of Tao actually is the Chinese translation of John 1:1. So, in the beginning was the Tao was with God, the Tao was God, the Tao became flesh. Like that completely revolutionized that concept.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I want to ask, Inspiring Christianity, are you from Alaska by chance?
I'm not from Alaska. No, I'm actually from Canada.
Okay. I was just trying to make out your accent, because it sounds like there's a show that has these Alaskan people, and they have a similar accent to yours.
Yeah, no, like so many people think I have an accent. It's actually kind of funny, because I often actually times ask people to guess what they think my accent is, because I get like from all over the place, and I just kind of find funny how many people think I have an accent.
I guessed Massachusetts.
You would have guessed Massachusetts?
That's what I guessed yesterday. I did.
Really?
Guess. Yeah. I thought when he started talking, I could have sworn it was a Massachusetts accent at first.
Like park the car in the yard?
Yeah. Well, I have cousins who are like from Stoneham, which is right outside of Boston, who talk exactly like that. Park the car. It's wicked cool. Did you guys see Good Will Hunting? Those sound exactly like my cousins. And actually, the town, Ben Affleck. Have you seen that one? It's really good. Ben Affleck wrote it and directed it.
Yeah, that's a great movie. It really is. Good Will Hunting. That's pretty cool.
I really liked what you had said there, Rob. It kind of pointed out the need, I guess, for the first commandment that Jesus gives to his followers, that love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because in order to go about loving the neighbor as yourself, you have to have some sort of, I guess, because I don't know, that at least for me, I know that's always a lot harder to follow through with. Especially, I don't know, it's easy to be conceited and only do things that are for your own good rather than others. But in order to go through it, in order to even get the, I guess, motivating factors to do it, you have to first love something other than yourself, that being God first. And then God then provides you with the, I guess, means for which you can love the neighbor as yourself. In fact, it reminded me of this quote from Corrie ten Boom in her book, The Hiding Place. She's referring to a time when, like, she had to, or she saw, I think, like, one of the guards that had killed her sister. And this, I guess, her internal monologue. Even as the angry, vengeful thoughts boiled up through me, I saw the sin of them. Jesus Christ had died for this man. Was I going to ask for more? Lord Jesus, I prayed, forgive me and help me to forgive him. Jesus, I cannot forgive him. Give me your forgiveness. And so I discovered that it is not our forgiveness any more than it is our goodness that the world's healing hinges upon, but on his. When he tells us to love our enemies, he gives along with the command the love itself. Yeah, I found that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, a good question from John.
Anna, go for it.
Oh, no, I just see a good question from John. He says, who is your neighbor? Jesus answered the question with the parable of the Good Samaritan. So everyone's our neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that stuff like really powerful as you're saying it, John. But then I'm thinking like, like, would I find it as powerful if, if it was like someone saying like the Prophet Muhammad instead of Jesus? So, like I could see how there are these almost analogous stories that people who have other religions that fill that hole in their, deal with that existential angst or whatever for them. And I guess, it's, even though I find it like really powerful or beautiful or whatever, it's that connecting it to truth that I really struggle with, like the, like getting from the, okay, that's really compelling to like, well, that's actually the way the world is. And then the further difficulty, right, for me is then I like go to church and like people are talking about how the world's like 2,000 years old and I'm like, and then even though I know Christian, like not all Christians think that or whatever, the cognitive dissonance of that being like there and stuff is just like, wasn't it just more honest for me to just be like, I don't know, like, because that's truly how, even though like, yeah, okay, that's really beautiful or compelling or whatever for this person to say that. I don't know, could it be equally as compelling for like if they were within some other religious framework or, possibly so. And
that's the thing, like you read the Tao Te Ching and you get like these really impactful sort of messages of wisdom that are brought about through hundreds of years of sort of dedication and sort of like cultural passing along, and even within Buddhist texts as well. And there are areas of overlap that you can find between them. And so maybe if you want to just retain the areas of overlap and any of the exclusionary aspects or principles between each religion, that's fine. But then, I don't know, that's kind of like going into, I guess, perennialism, I guess, of some sort, which I know, Craig, you kind of considered yourself a perennialist for a while, right?
No, I don't consider myself a perennialist. But
the
reason why perennialism, the reason why it rings true to a lot of people is because when you start studying comparative religion, the first thing you'll notice is things like in the Tao Te Ching that are wisdom truths that correspond almost note for note to things you'll see in the Bible. They're almost the exact same idea in a different context. Same thing with Buddhism. A key tenet of Buddhism is to be humble and humble yourself, just the way Jesus taught. You could almost argue that Christianity, if the goal of Christianity is trying to impart Christ likeness to somebody, to make them more like humble, compassionate, loving, there's similar. Buddhism isn't all that different. It's like trying to, and Taoism is totally similar in terms of the goal it's trying to put in a human being is to, if you know the Tao, they call it kind-hearted as a grandmother, disinterested, dispassionate, humble, and observant, something like that. Like very similar to Christ likeness, but in a different context. So it's, I take that to mean that how I read that is that there are possibly universal spiritual truths that even somebody in a different religious context could have some access to if they were an honest human being. That's how I see that. But some people would. I don't know. To me, that makes sense.
Of course agree with you after spending hours and hours talking about objective morality. So I completely agree with you. You guys, I actually probably not gonna be able to go too much longer because I have another stream that I'm gonna go on G-Man's channel in a half hour. So I wanted to see. But I was just wondering, Inspiring Christianity and John Buck, I don't know if I have links to your channels in my automated thing here. And I know I've got links to everybody else's in my automated, in my description that I populate. Both of you, I know, Ryder, you have a channel. I think I just subscribed to it the other day when I just found it. And I can't believe I wasn't subscribed. And I don't know if Inspiring Christianity has a channel, but I'm going to make sure I put those in my permanent links.
He does. He has his books. What's on display? His first video was out yesterday. A list of his books.
Yeah, no. I just did like a bookshelf tour. I just used my phone and I went all my books. But you don't have to put a link to my channel. I don't really care. You just put a link to my Twitter thing. That's where I'm most active.
Okay, I'll find your channel. Is it called Inspiring Christianity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, did you want to add something else? I noticed you turned the camera on and it looked like parked your car as well.
I'll just be very brief. Based on your reaction to what I was saying, I think, because I'm sort of thinking of a guest here who's flirting. He was Christian and then he's left Christianity and now he's. I mean, I really appreciate his honesty. So obviously Nathan in the chat here, right? So one thing I think Nathan wants us to understand. So I'm sort of like putting an arm around his shoulder just to reassure him that I think I get where he's coming from. And that is when we talk about these concepts like golden rule, blah, blah, and then we showcase how Christianity has a very strong, grounded, fully fledged out perspective on these questions. I think Nathan is getting what Nathan's getting at is this sounds a bit too good to be true that the biblical corpus happens to be the most it has the most explanatory power or the most efficient means to engage those questions, or basically, the whole concept of Theo New Stars, God breathed, like this text is so if humans across the ages can ask these questions, then, and we see that obviously in other religions, but the Christian claim is that okay, that's all well and good, but if you want the full-fledged answer to those questions, especially things like the golden rule, look to the Bible. And I think Nathan is having a type of skepticism that, look, that it sounds too narrow, it sounds too boxed in, like why can't I look to something else apart from the Bible to get those same concepts? And so then so in response, all I'll have to say is, look, the one sufficient and efficient means for God to narrow it down, and as the biblical claim is that this is the case, and that is the incarnation. If the incarnation, if the cross, if the resurrection was indeed an actual reality, then all the other ideas or very similar ideas that you see across the board in other religions is just an expression of the imago Dei working, but looking through a glass darkly, like what Paul would say. Whereas we have the
what do we do with do we do with Krishna speaking to Arjuna on the chariot? Like what? It's. You know, what do we do with Krishna speaking to Arjuna on the chariot? Like, as in, it's not, that is certainly part of the complaint. Like, it seems too narrow, but also that it seems like the way, you know, someone puts their flag in the sand and then almost applies a sort of level of bias in favor of that one that's been chosen. It seems maybe not in a sense arbitrary. Maybe it's to do with like, you know, maybe there are like other factors as to why people choose. I don't know if that's someone's. It might be you inspiring Christianity, the fan. If you could mute yourself, maybe.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, like it's just kind of.
Did I get it right though, Nathan? Was I following your thought process as a discussion was going on?
You've got part of it right. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, part of it is that like it seems too restricting to say, because Christianity like has some really, really cool and true things, but it's like, I'd expect if it was the real deal that it would just be like so much more apparent than against the other ones, and I can't see that. And like the reasons that you're saying with the incarnation, for example, it's like I can see that there are other religions that have like similar concepts to that, or things where they, you know, they could, and it doesn't, and that's beside the point of whether I actually like think anything like that is really true, or whether it's like a cool psychological myth that we can identify with and say, well, this is what, when I say like, you know, like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, I'm like identifying with his life story and saying I intend to act that way, or something like that, rather than yeah.
So this is why I did that super chat the way I did it, and this is sort of a testimony now to what this is directed now towards Christians, so especially SJ, to see why I said theology matters. Because imagine someone like Matt Dillahunty being through a course on, say, Romans. So theologically speaking, what is Paul getting at in Romans 3, Romans 4, Romans 5, on, you know, all the way through? Like, he actually gets the theology of Romans. Then I would love to see his reaction. Like how would he oppose that? Now, in a way, I'm kind of putting Nathan on the spot here, but Nathan is being honest that, look, if it's fleshed out properly, without bias, you know, the theology of the Christian doctrine, it is a beautiful thing. It is a very beautiful concept that you have the God of the universe showcasing a type of justification, but also deification, theosis, glorification for this particular creature he's made, and on it goes. So really, where the rubber hits the road is, well, then justify that. That's really it. Otherwise, the theology, you can't argue against the theology. It's very unique.
Yeah, it is unique. That's actually, and it was funny because I was kind of in that camp where in my 20s I kind of gravitated away from Christianity. I was raised a Catholic, and I started looking at the Eastern faiths and thinking they were superior. And it wasn't till 2012 or going back, it wasn't till about 2011, 2012 when things started changing for me, and Jesus started making himself very obvious to me. And I thought Christianity was the default, and I thought it was kind of boring. And I thought these other ones were more exotic and interesting. But now that I've studied it so much more and I understand it so much better, and I understand this idea of God reconciling his perfect justice and his perfect mercy on Calvary with Jesus, and Jesus taking and paying the price for our sins, I realize that Christianity itself is just a beautiful offering.
But SJ, have you seen, so there's this video that I think is brilliant. You know how Pine Creek does those little clips, and there's one where he says, you know, it's the Spirit of God rolled out, and it comes into your heart, and it's so beautiful. And, you know, I was skeptical at first. I thought, but then when it happened to me and you realize it's true. And then at the end, this guy goes, and that's why I'm a Hindu or something, you know, like, and people say, you know, like, I understand it. Like, that could be from your point of view as a person in the world, that could work for you, but and I'm not a relativist on truth, but I'm saying, like, I've not had that experience. So, you know, like, what am I meant to do with that? Like, you know, because it's, like, what am I meant to do? Okay, fair enough. Like, God revealed himself to you and says, but then, like, what the hell do I do with that? Like,
yeah, no, I think
I just want to say, just be open to
Yeah.
God doing that. That's all. Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
But just quickly, Nathan. When I said theology matters, and that whole all that stuff that you see in the New Testament about the theology of God, like God proper and all that stuff, right? Like, to me, that's the whole principle of Romans 12 verses 1 and 2, where it says, "Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice." So this is usually translations will have, this is your reasonable way to worship, but in the Greek it's logos worship. So this is like a logical or scientific way to worship. And then renew your minds, continue to renew your minds every day. I find the theology to be a mind engaging, intellectually engaging thing, not so much like the Mormons, like a warming in the heart and this feels good to me sort of thing. No, this is something we have to reflect and think about. Isn't it interesting that Judeo-Christianity is a very book-based religion? It's literature-based, book-based. It's. I mean, why the whole concept of textual criticism? It's all the nitty-gritty stuff about, specific spellings to communicate a certain theological idea, and so then when you and Pine Creek, well, specifically Pine Creek, when he, in a very, in my opinion, very immature way, when he engages
he's got to you with
spiritual...
1,000 books, hasn't he? He's got.
No, not really, because I'm. It is a tongue-in-cheek thing. That's why I responded back with that video where, showing the bibliography that, look, you mean to say, Pine Creek, that all of these people themselves are being a bit arrogant in their own studies? It's like, not really. Like, this stuff is something where people are really passionate about because they see the logic in the theology of it, but also what follows from that logic is that inner passion of a heartfelt sort of like realization. But it's not neglecting the mind engagement. That's the point. And yeah.
I just, like, even so still, like you were saying about the Mormons, it's more of a feeling or whatever. But you can watch this debate, say, between James White and this Mormon, I forget the Mormon scholar's name. He was
Quaker?
like a lawyer. No. This was like 2009 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And the guy, and he's talking about the Mormon doctrine of theosis because James White was going to go, well, you get your own planet or whatever. That's ridiculous. But this guy he's there on the debate stand. And he goes, so I've got a pile of books. He's like, I've got Origin here, August, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about your doctrine of theosis and how the Mormon one fits it. Like, it's not like he had an intellectually bereft kind of theology, this Mormon guy. Like, it's not like Christianity again it's not like this is something that's exclusive to Christianity, right? And inaccessible to people of other faiths. Or
but just notice though quickly, and this is something I told recently a guy who was confused about Michael Heiser. I had a interview with him where I told him about how a Mormon approached Michael Heiser about am I saved? Basically, that's the question. But to cut the story short, the Mormon tells Heiser, look, the reason why I'm at this biblical scholarship conference is because us Mormons, and we can extend that to Jehovah's Witnesses as well, we don't actually do the hard, it's an Australian term, we don't do the hard yakka, like we don't do the hard yards or the hard work to figure out, archaeologically what certain texts are saying, theologically, textual critically, all that stuff. It's like you Orthodox Christians, you're the ones that actually care about this stuff, and because at the same time you're authenticating what you believe and all that. So all we do is we rely on you to produce the material, and then we run with it. And that, I think, communicates exactly what I think Pine Creek should be criticizing, and that is, I believe Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses are basically cultic in their theology as well. And that to me shows that here you have critical scholars who acknowledge, the scientific method and the way they do things, and they don't have a theological bias that grounds it. Here comes these groups that are offshoots of Christianity, like that guy with James White. Oh, look at all these Orthodox church fathers that spoke about theosis. Yeah, duh, but those same church fathers would disagree with Joseph Smith. So you can't just cherry pick. I mean, they're the ones that are cherry picking to authenticate their faith. And
I didn't mean I
yeah.
meant in the sense that it seemed like what you were saying was something like Christianity provides like a rich theology which engages the intellect, and that is a way of like worshiping God, but that would be something that makes Christianity enticing or something. But I suppose what I was responding to that was, it seems like I could have that within, or even if we take it away from Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses, like Al-Khazali, Avicenna, Averroes, Maimonides, the Jew, like all these other Abrahamic religions, or Confucius, or you can go into and still have a rich intellectual kind of theology, and get like, it doesn't seem, I still can't just see how this it's the same with almost like the well-being and utility, like that feature of it isn't connected to something that's specific to Christianity, and almost can be pulled out and had without some of the other maybe negative parts. Like, you can look at what's good, go let's try and just take the things we see that are good and put them all together into my life, brother. Yeah.
Let me let me just interject here, because we're gonna have to. I've got G-Man actually, who came in the chat and just reminded me that he sent the link to me already to get into his channel. So,
okay, one quick 5-second remark. You will not find the Great Commission challenge that Jesus gives his apostles. You will not find that in any other religion. It's uniquely Judeo-Christian, meaning the so-called intellectual insights you may get in other religions, yes, but only in its localized social context, because that's just how human beings operate in localized social context. The Christian religion is the only unique one to say, this Judeo-Christian Middle Eastern religion 2,000 years ago is applicable to the whole world in a timeless context. And that's a remarkable claim.
That's interesting. Let me just have each of you, if you want to just share with the group here, how I'm going to put links to your stuff. In fact, John Buck sent me his video, his YouTube channel. I'm also going to do it to Inspiring Christianity. But if you guys want to just let everybody know how they can find you, if there's other ways, and maybe what you're working on, that'd be great.
Do you want me to go first? Like, should we go around in a... Yeah. So my channel is called Digital Gnosis. It's also in podcast form, some of the episodes. So if you look for Digital Gnosis on like iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that sort of thing. The good things that I do is probably like interviewing philosophers in general, or theologians, biblical scholars, things like that. And so when I host those interviews, they're also in podcast form. I also occasionally make videos that might be topical. I'm considering how to do that more, because I don't know much about video editing or whatever, and maybe getting into that, and I'm lazy. But yeah, that's what I do in my channel. And there's conversations and stuff as well. That's
great. Thank you.
I can go next. So you'll probably find me on Twitter. I spend way too much time on there. And in the future, I'm just looking to have, I really want to have a discussion with somebody on the minimal facts argument, because I don't think that's a successful argument for Christianity. So I'm probably not going to produce much content on my channel, but I'm looking to have more conversations with people on YouTube.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
I'm on Twitter at Writer John Buck. Right now, I've been working on this video probably for the past like 4 months, just in my spare time. It's going to be sort of the beginning part to a series on moral epistemology, like how do we know what we ought to do or what we ought not to do. And so my first video is going to be just to focus on epistemology in general, like whether we can even have knowledge. And so I'll be tackling, I think I've worked up 10 different arguments for skepticism. And so I'm going to be responding to each of those arguments in the video, God willing. It's something I've been working on for a while and haven't even made that much progress. But yeah, that's what I'm doing.
That's great. So you've gone away from the T-jump videos.
Yeah, I mean, that was fun, and I might return to it, but I want to do more original content.
Very good.
You should analyze the godless girl debate, John. You should break that down. Godless girl T-jump. That was a classic.
Okay. All right, Rob?
So I've finished commentaries on Ephesians and Revelation, and right now my study group asked me to go through Mark. So I finished chapters 1 to 3 in Mark. It's about 70 pages now, and that's my next project. Well, currently my project. So, yep.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
I just
And
remembered
by
I
the
forgot
way-
to finish your
Yep.
writing on Revelation, which is really great. You did a phenomenal job. I'm halfway through. I got to go back and finish that.
Sweet. And I just wanted to say, I really do appreciate you, Nathan. Like, I've never considered you. I've never seen you in a negative way. Is what I'm saying. Like,
Oh, you should do.
I
I've told because we did a video on inspiring philosophies thingy, and he got very defensive about the tomb stuff, and I was just like, man, yeah, I'm evil,
Yeah.
I'm awful, I'm horrible, so you're justified to not talk to me, but you're still invited on if you want to talk.
yeah.
It's funny. Craig?
Yeah, my channel is called Craig Reed TCR, and I put out videos probably about 3 or 4 a week on just random topics. The next one I put out will probably be the secular utility of religion. There was a Twitter semi-feud I got into like last week that I'll probably comment on. Wasn't quite as Twitter feud, but it was almost Twitter feud. And then I'll be interviewing John DePie on Friday. And these guys are going to have some sort of mock debate. John and Inspiring Christianity are going to have some sort of practice debate at some point. I think in the next week. We'll see if we get it worked out. And that's about it. I'm
That
blowing up
sounds
on
good.
TikTok, doing TikTok all the time. TikTok dances, TikTok sketches, blowing up.
Are you
All
actually?
right.
You actually on TikTok, Craig?
What's that?
Are you actually on TikTok?
I can't. What did he say? Am I actually on TikTok? I actually am on
Yeah.
TikTok. I watch TikTok.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have a TikTok.
I
channel.
refuse to go on TikTok. I just refuse. I'm like, I'm too
No,
addicted
Stephanie,
to
you're going to come
YouTube
on my
and
TikTok Christian.
What's
Twitter.
Preach the gospel.
It's owned by it's made by Chinese, and some people have looked into
I
it
thought
and
Trump
said,
tried to get that banned, or he's trying to get that banned.
yeah, well, I think Microsoft are trying to buy it out so that they can continue to have it, and then the US can spy on you instead of the Chinese. But
Yeah, it's got till no. If it's not bought by an American company by November, that's what it's switched to.
Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for coming in here. Please subscribe, like, come again. I have a very low percentage of people who subscribe who watch my channel. So I actually look at the numbers and it's like kind of pathetic. So it'd be great if you guys would subscribe. That'd be wonderful if you haven't yet. So thank you, everybody, for coming in here spur of the moment without really much preparation and all the great contributions. So I just want to say I appreciate it. And if you want to meet me over at G-Man's channel, I'm going to be over there reviewing the rest of the Matt Dillahunty McClatchy debate. And we're even going to talk about the part where McClatchy left for a little while.
Call it lazy Dillahunty.
I'll make sure I get that in there in case he actually happens upon it. So